Hello and welcome back to another Hub 101. It is Imani Moore, and as many of you already may know, I represent three letters ACT, Austin Coming Together. Uh, Here at Austin Coming Together, we are a backbone agency for collective impact, serving a network of nonprofit, faith-based, public and private member organizations. As part of ACT, the Austin Community Hub is a safe space to intentionally and thoughtfully engage disconnected families and individuals in collaboration with our member base to securely connect community members to holistic services such as career counseling, housing, continuing education, legal assistance, and many more. Part of these services include informing our community members about the different organizations that we work with and the great resources and programs that they have to offer. So we created Hub 101s. But this month rather, it's a special month. As you all may know, in January, we like to keep it in-house and present one of our own. So today we have P&I, the planning and investment team of ACT. P&I is tasked with the duty of implementing Austin's quality of life plan and so much more other things. So without further ado, we'll begin a presentation from two incredible representatives of that team today. We got the new planning and investment manager, Ethan Ramsey. New title, but familiar face, I'm sure. And we have the new lovely project coordinator, Mia Allman. And we will, after the presentation, we'll have chances for questions. Please feel free to drop them in the live Facebook chat. Yeah, I'm sure, I know you guys will have a lot of questions. This is a subject that's near and dear to me, being an Austin resident. So I'm definitely excited for this presentation today. P and I will be giving you a presentation on the redevelopment of Central Avenue. So floor is yours. Take it away, guys.
Hello, everybody. Let me share my screen. Just take 1 second. Okay, I think we're good to go. So as I said, my name is Ethan Ramsey, and I'm the planning and investment manager for Austin Coming Together, having been with ACT for over 5 years now. And I'll pass it to Mia just to do a quick introduction as well.
Hi, I'm Mia. I'm the new project coordinator for ACT on the P&I team, and this is like my second month here, so newbie.
Perfect. So both Mia and I are responsible for supporting the implementation of the Austin Forward Together Quality of Life Plan, as well as spurring planning efforts at the community level. So today we're talking to you about developing a plan for Central Avenue in Austin. And our goal is to discuss what's happened to date, our present moment, as well as what's coming up in the near future. And again, just a reminder to folks that they can add questions in the chat, and we'll try our best to answer them. So first, we'll discuss why we're developing a corridor plan for Central Avenue in the first place. Next, we'll talk a little bit about our primary technical partners on this project and what community engagement has looked like to date regarding this plan. Next, Mia will dig a little bit deeper into an initial report developed for Central Avenue called the Technical Assistance Panel Report. And last, we'll close out with some next steps and ways for you to get involved. So, as many of you likely know, Austin's first quality of life plan, Austin Forward Together, was published in December of 2018. And the process of constructing this ambitious plan entailed engaging over 500 residents and community stakeholders over an 18-month period. Notably, this plan is committed to connecting all parts of Austin rather than, specific sub-neighborhoods within the community. So here is the original vision for the Austin Forward Together plan. And I'll just read it out loud for everyone. Austin is becoming a powerful community and of civically engaged residents, responsive and accountable institutions, and highly collaborative private, public, nonprofit, faith-based leaders. And out of that power, we will create support for our youth and a high-quality cradle-to-career education system, economic revitalization for and by Austin, safe neighborhoods for all ages, a revitalized community spirit built on our cultural and recreational assets, and a vibrant real estate market that supports homeowners and affordable housing. So as we get into the details of Central Avenue planning, technically another plan, it's vital that this plan and the Central Avenue Corridor Plan aligns with the vision of Austin Forward Together to ensure that it's equitably implemented and that longtime residents get to see the benefits without any sort of displacement. So it's important before we get into Central Avenue planning to discuss what's in the quality of life plan Austin Forward Together. As many of you know, the plan is broken down into 7 key issue areas: community narrative, economic development, education, housing, public safety, youth empowerment, and civic engagement. And in total, there are 85 recommendations, or what we call actions, in the Austin Forward Together plan. To implement these various actions, we have 7 corresponding task forces made up of volunteer chairs and volunteer strategy leads who oversee and facilitate collaborative action with organizations and community leaders committed to the plan. But there's also another component to the Austin Forward Together Quality of Life Plan, and that is focal projects. Focal projects, well, they're development or built environment projects that support actions across the plan and require capital investment. And the AFT plan originally included 3 specific focal projects, one of them being Central Avenue Corridor. It's also worth noting that there was another focal project in the original Quality of Life plan, also along Central, and that's the Aspire Center for Workforce Innovation. It's worth noting that this development will be a destination for top-notch workforce training, and that it's really an example or an inspiring feat of community organizing because the center was largely made possible by the firm commitment of Austin residents who stepped up and donated their own money to the cause. Now, today, development projects designated as focal projects serve as a type of endorsement from Austin Coming Together leaders, those chairs and strategy leads, signifying that a development project aligns with the vision and the goals of the Quality of Life. So, in the original Quality of Life plan, you can see this map featuring Central Avenue. And if you look closer, different intersections have unique focuses, such as local shopping areas in the Soul City corridor and a town center at Central and Lake. Now, for everyone's sake, I've increased the size of the font from the last page. And again, this is the original vision for Central Avenue as outlined in the Austin Forward Together Quality of Life Plan. It says, we propose that Central Avenue can complement these efforts by becoming Austin's main street, connecting some of our community's strongest assets. A healthy Central Avenue corridor, consistently branded from the north to the south, will serve as a unifying presence, both supporting and illustrating a thriving and united Austin. Now, in order to create a robust corridor plan, we knew it would be essential to partner with planners who have technical expertise and could connect us with key governmental agencies. So that's where CMAP comes in. Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning is a regional planning organization for Northeastern Illinois. And they're partnering with both Austin Coming Together and the larger community to advance the vision of Central Avenue as articulated in the Austin Forward Together plan. In many respects, they are the technical backbone for this project. Now, our goal is for the corridor plan to be a framework that's informed by community engagement and lays out an equitable future for Central Avenue. So here is a really high-level timeline of the engagement conducted today for Central Avenue planning. The planning efforts really started to gain momentum after last year's community summit in January. And then between April and May, we worked with a partner, Urban Land Institute, a technical panel of community development specialists, and community leaders in drafting an initial report of recommendations. Mia will discuss more about this process and some of the recommendations later. Now, in addition to publishing a special section in the Austin Weekly News featuring Central Avenue, we started attending pop-up events in the summer and hosting thematic walkabouts in the fall. Overall, we've engaged hundreds of community stakeholders in shaping the development of the Central Avenue plan. Now, let's get a little bit more into the particulars of community engagement. To create a plan, the first thing that you have to do is understand the existing conditions. What are the community assets, and where are there opportunities for improvements? So in the first few months of 2023, the CMAP planners analyzed public data from sources such as the Census Bureau, as well as engaged a number of community leaders to better understand the existing conditions. Now, throughout the year, we have continued to rely on our Austin Forward Together Quality of Life Plan chairs and strategy leads to advise on the planning approach and recommendations. Then, starting in July, we started promoting a community survey, both online and at pop-up events. These surveys were meant to understand what it feels like to be a pedestrian along Central Avenue, as well as engage folks about their ideas on re-envisioning Central Avenue as Austin's main street. So these photos represent some of the events CMAP and ACT planners attended and engaged folks around Central Avenue. In addition to attending, one-time events like the Aspire groundbreaking celebration and an Austin Eats film screening, we engaged residents repeatedly at the Austin Town Hall City Market or the Farmers Market and at block club parties, especially end of summer block club parties. And it just wasn't about filling out a survey. At the following events, CMAP presented large, colorful maps of the area and asked residents to talk about what was missing on Central Avenue. What were some of their transportation and mobility challenges, and what solutions they thought would be effective. So next, I just want to mention some of the survey responses and how those will influence the planning process. We asked a number of questions, including if residents would regularly take the train if the Blue Line L station at Central was reopened. And based on the survey, a little bit over 80% said yes or maybe, suggesting it's really important to residents that at the very least there be a feasibility study conducted on reopening this site. Next here are questions around the Lake Street, the Green Line Central Avenue station area. And the top graph indicates that survey respondents, on average, are honestly less inclined to ride the CTA at Central or walk around that area as pedestrians. Now, below are some potential ways to help make it a better place to walk through, from adding more lighting to investing in street and building repairs. Now, this graph gives us a little bit of an idea about where people feel less safe crossing the street around Central. Based on the survey results, there might be a need for or more urgency towards implementing recommendations for North Avenue and Lake Street to make it more pedestrian friendly. And then lastly, when asked about what would contribute to a more lively, safe, and attractive feeling along Central Avenue, respondents expressed particular interest in more play areas, decorative lights, and tree plantings along the corridor. Now, lastly, CMAP led a couple of thematic walkabouts, which are basically engagements where planners and community stakeholders walk through key areas and intersections, answering very specific guided questions. This also opened the opportunity to engage business owners along the corridor, some of who attended previous public meetings and others who had not. The team took detailed notes during the tours and incorporated what they learned into an emerging list of recommendations. Now, some recommendations born out of these engagements over the summer and fall include the need to prioritize youth-designed spaces along the corridor. One example being the vacant lot at Ohio and Central. It also included creating and repairing existing public murals. And lastly, also included advocating for the establishment of a city service center on Central for ID cards, bill pay, job services, and more. So now I'm going to pass it to Mia to talk a little bit more about the technical assistance panel report and next steps.
All right. Yeah, so I'm gonna get into the TAP report. And so basically what it is Urban Land Institute, a nonprofit education and research institute representing aspects of land use and development. They convened a technical assistance panel to provide creative, practical solutions for land use challenges by communities' vision and which are rooted in market realities. And so they did this for Central Avenue to develop recommendations for repositioning the avenue as Austin's main street. And so prior to meeting, the panelists reviewed materials that included socioeconomic data for the corridor and existing plans and initiatives that were already underway on the avenue. In addition, there was a briefing of current conditions of Central Avenue, which included an initial presentation by Darnell Shields, our executive director of ACT, some group interviews with community members on current conditions and concerns that they may have for this space. And then there was also a bus tour of Central Avenue so that the panelists could get a visual of the space that they were evaluating. And so there was a lot of pre-informative actions to create this report. And basically they had 3 focus areas that they had to answer questions from. So one was development opportunities. So things like what kinds of retail or commercial uses are missing out and what would best serve residents in Austin. 2, public realm. So what kind of public realm improvements would enhance business attraction efforts were some of the questions. And 3, implementation strategies. So what kinds of research or resources and partnerships that Austin needs to be doing to carry out this large high-level plan. And so with some of their findings, TAP's purpose was to focus on what needed improvement in this area. And so they looked at all of the concerns that they found. So one of the concerns was an unmet demand for services and amenities. So there was a lack of places to hang out or do things, no coffee shops and restaurants, lack of grocery stores and banks, etc. 2 was a lack of consistent pedestrian appeal and safety. So we all kind of know that the Green Line acts as this big, large physical barrier between one side of Central Avenue and the other, and that poses a threat to safety. 2, there's a walkability varies along the avenue as well. And lastly, there's a lot of vacancies with buildings and lots along Central Avenue. A third finding was high unemployment and limited skill building opportunities. So there's a strong need for workforce training in the Central area. And lastly, there was a need for branding and marketing. So Austin needs some sort of logo or narrative to give light to its culture. And so with these findings, they created a set of recommendations based on the same focus areas. So public realm, development, and implementation. So with the public realm, their recommendations was firstly, establishing Central Avenue as a spine of community hubs reinforced by a necklace of open space, civic assets, and historic sites. 2 was to amplify and celebrate cultural spaces and historic sites by installing coordinated wayfinding systems, which are like maps and place markers or interpretive signage to attract visitors and residents. 3 was to enhance connectivity of the Central Avenue corridor. So some viaduct enhancements, improving micromobility. So maybe installing divvy bike sections and scooters becoming more accessible, implementing traffic signaling timing improvements. And again, as Ethan mentioned before, maybe reopening the Central Avenue Blue Line station. And lastly was the establishment of Central and Lake as the main community hub. And some ideas that they gave for that was blocking off traffic occasionally for farmers markets, arts fairs, or street festivals that could be in conjunction with the town hall park. And so those were the public realm recommendations. And so for development recommendation, they first, again, highlighted creating a town center or main community hub at Central and Lake to improve safety and activate vacant storefronts, and with that, encourage food-oriented businesses. 2 was an investment in Austin residents. And so, as mentioned, there's going to be the Aspire Center. And then we also have the Karen Center, and utilizing the Austin High School a bit more, and strong workforce training to go along with this. Thirdly, supporting surrounding residential neighborhoods. So support for homeowners in multifamily apartments. There could be some outreach done for financing, assisting programs to make necessary home repairs, or outreach for information on benefits such as property tax exemption. So that to make sure that we are keeping Austin residents in Austin after all of these beautiful recommendations are implemented. So those were the developmental recommendations. And then for implementation, so they gave us a first next steps after they created this. So the first one being begin to build a visual cohesion and identity along Central with coordinated wayfinding. And as I've said before, it's like maps and place markers for guiding people through Central Avenue. 2 is establish Austin Town Hall as a neighborhood gateway. So people feel as though that they can start at the town hall and make it a space where people can access information on Austin's history, places of interest, and current happenings in the space. 3 is create a master plan for Austin's main corridors in order to coordinate current and future investments and determine redevelopment priorities. And then TAP focus mainly on the area between Chicago and Avenue and Jackson Boulevard, but the larger master plan that they mentioned isn't as restrictive and includes areas all the way up to 290. And lastly, for the last 2 bullets, they wanted to coordinate planning efforts with city departments and city agencies to support Austin's quality of life plan and continue to work with community members and partners to realize the future for Central. And so right now, where we are is based on this TAP report, there's been a creation of a master document of detailed recommendations by CMAP for the Central Avenue, which engages some key implementers, so like CTA, CPS, CPD. And right now what we're doing is reckoning with those recommendations and providing feedback on what should be prioritized, maybe alterations to the recommendations as well. And what we're hoping to do is have a finalization of the plan with community feedback. And to do so, one way you can do is just by reaching out to one of us after this Hub 101, but another larger way to become more engaged in the greater scale of Austin's progress, but also for this Central Avenue plan is through our 2024 Community Summit. At that summit, we will be celebrating the accomplishments of our AFT community leaders from our 5-year implementation period. And here you can learn how to become more engaged and give feedback on the Central Avenue plan. And that will be taking place on Saturday, March 9th at 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. That wraps up the presentation portion. I think we'll be getting into the question and answers now. Oh, well, for the QR code, that would be if you want to become more engaged and also if you had any more questions or concerns, but I think we might get into that a bit. And if you did have any, um, if you wanted to contact and learn more or ask questions personally, there's my email, so you can contact me.
Thank you, Mia. Thank you, Ethan. Great presentation. Okay, now it's time for some questions. Beautiful, beautiful. First question that we have. What kind of businesses are coming to Central Ave that will bring food resources slash out food outcomes to Austin?
Hey, I can take that question. So it's worth noting that as we speak, and this has been a big effort of the Soul City corridor, as well as Liz from 40 Acres Fresh Market, but there is, there's a grocery store currently under construction on Chicago Avenue, not that far away from Central. So that's already a project underway um, to address this solution to be having access to high quality and affordable food within the community. Secondly, another great asset that's been, had an increase in both customers as well as vendors over the last couple of years is the Austin Town Hall City Market. And so, we want to like push for more investment. We want to encourage residents to continue to attend the market and make it a place for connectivity, for community. And this plan potentially will provide recommendations on being able to support the Austin Town Hall City Market for the long term and make it even more amenable to residents. Lastly, it should be noted there is mentions in the plan, and we're still trying to figure out the details, but that there was or there is that corner on Corcoran. I think it was called the Corcoran Grocery Store. It's been closed, I believe, since 2017. And there's recommendations to potentially work with the landowners of this site and see if it has the opportunity to also provide food resources in the long term. But that's still to be determined.
Okay, thanks. And this wasn't in the questions, but bringing this made me think about something. Just being out in the community, I've heard residents mention the Leamington, the grocery store. I was wondering, is there any connection or potential talks in the works of having them a part of this food resource along Central Avenue as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, Leamington's has been a grocery store close to Central for a very long time. It's also worth noting that there's been a lot of community input planning behind the Aspire Center for Workforce Innovation right across the street. I think it would be worth our time to figure out the connectivity there. Specifics, to be perfectly frank, have not been developed around what that could look like.
Great. Oh, that's perfect. Thank you for that great answer. Now, our next question is, how will community residents' ideas and involvement be prioritized, especially when it comes to businesses along Central?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is without a plan, like a plan provides an opportunity for community input and kind of a framework that we as institutions, as Block Club leaders, as just activists in the community can kind of use that in order to kind of push for businesses that serve the interests of the community and the Austin Quality of Life Plan. I think that's the whole point of this plan, is to kind of act as a guide or blueprint for potentially supporting longtime businesses and attracting new ones. I think community input, how community can play a role in this process is, one, many of you have participated in the planning process to date. And again, there's going to be more opportunity at the community summit to provide input, be able to tweak recommendations, give a little bit more attention to the details as they're starting to get built out. As well as, yeah, I know this seems easy, but like being able to contact me and Mia and having those one-on-one conversations and figuring out how your ideas can be incorporated, because we're really serious about making sure that there's large buy-in around the ultimate plan that gets created and published.
Great, that's a great point. Yeah, so please, you see us out, don't throw away our flyers. We're really begging for your input. Like, definitely want your voice to be heard in this. I don't think it's successful without the community's voice. So that's definitely an important part of that. Thanks, Ethan. Okay, I know you touched briefly on this during the presentation, but are there any plans for redevelopment, Central Green Line stop, or plans for adding green space along Corcoran?
I could take that. So there are in the recommendations, there has been a priority of fixing the viaduct with paint, lighting, and a cleaning of the space. So there is redevelopment plans for that green line stop, especially to improve its safety. And then for both sides of the green line station, there's like this concept of curbless openings to provide a little bit more space. And as mentioned before, there will be like this idea of like stopping traffic so that we can do things like farmers markets and art fairs and such. And then for the question about the Corcoran space, not necessarily adding green space, but they have focused on redeveloping it with an innovative like people-focused concept. So like maybe a healthy grocery store, food vendors, a cafe, everything's kind of like food oriented around that space. So that's the idea that they're having right now for that redevelopment concepts.
Okay, and Ethan, I heard you mention the blue line earlier. Is that just an idea, or are there plans around potentially opening that space, or is that something else that the community will have to or should be trying to show support if they're for it or against that reopening of that L station at?
That's a really good question. I think as many of you might know, the Blue Line station at Central has been closed for decades. And right now, if you live in South Austin and want to take the Blue Line, there's a couple stops you can get off at. But not that many. It's basically Cicero on the east side of the neighborhood. And you can only get off on a very busy street that isn't necessarily safe for pedestrians. And the other option is Austin Boulevard on the other side of the neighborhood. And so it makes it not necessarily the most useful form of public transportation to get home or to get to work. And so I think they're based on survey results, based on engagements, there is an interest in looking at what would that really take. And this is a first look of showing that there's real urgency behind this. It's not just something where one person or two people are saying, but there's actually community desire to want to see what's the feasibility, how much investment will it take, and how do we get there? So I think it is serious. I think in order for it to be realized, it would likely have to take a really intense community organizing campaign. But I think this is the start of maybe, making it not just something you talk about, but potentially real more serious action.
Great. Now this is a great question right here. How has the plan changed or progressed since the public meeting at the K-Ryan Center last year?
Yeah, I can take that one too. So last year at the presentation at the K-Ryan Center for the Arts, it was really focused on the TAP report. And in many respects, Mia provided a really great download of the TAP report findings and recommendations. Since then, CMAP, Austin Coming Together and stuff have really been devoted to more of these pop-up events doing these surveys, kind of continuing the engagement to make sure that there are other recommendations that can be incorporated into the final plan. It's not just the TAP report. And also be able to look at the TAP report and see kind of go one step deeper in trying to kind of dissect the TAP report recommendations and try to figure out how to make them a little bit more operational. So who would be the potential partners leading potential recommendations? What are maybe some funding routes we should consider in order to make these recommendations come to fruition? So it's been like using the TAP report as almost an input, almost a place to start, and then doing community engagement to start kind of expanding on that and hopefully creating a more or a more expansive plan for Central Avenue that again goes beyond just Chicago to Madison, but also thinks about the the 290 and maybe things recommendations as far as Avenue.
Great. Hey, this is a question for the VIDOC at Central and Lake. So, said funding has been allocated twice for a mural under the VIDOC at Central and Lake. Will that project move forward? And it's a two-part question. What efforts and incentives will be utilized to attract businesses or keep and enhance existing businesses on Central Avenue?
Okay, I can take that. So for the first question about the funding regarding the mural under the viaduct, there is efforts, as I mentioned before, of beautification for the viaduct, so like the cleaning, painting it, and such. The official plan speaks to like projects that are already underway as well. So there's an understanding that this mural project is something that it's been worked on. And so the purpose is to try to collaborate with already underway projects and initiatives to get that project like completed essentially. And in terms of what efforts for businesses to become like attracted to Central Avenue. For that, the recommendations that they pose is to get more businesses and such. However, the specific actions and progress to do so has not been underlined as efficient yet. Right now, we're under the pressure of conceptualizing the recommendations that CMAP gave us. And moving forward, we will be getting into the weeds of like what each one of these recommendations will look like and what next steps needs to happen for it to be completed. So things like what efforts and incentives will be used will come at a later point once we've solidified that these are the recommendations that we want to go for Central Ave. Yeah.
Okay, yes. And as well, I want to keep stressing input, community input. I'm sure the P&I team would love that, being that Central is heavily a residential area. So these things that are ideas, we have to think about them a lot. So though any ideas and input from the community are definitely welcome to help that team keep furthering that process. Next question. Okay. Will there be funding or resources to bring businesses to the corridor? Resources to enhance businesses. Okay, that's pretty much the same thing. Oh, are there future plans for youth programs or youth sites along Central?
I can take that one. So it's worth noting that Central Avenue is this beautiful corridor that has a bunch of parks along it with great programming, schools that are also have after school programming, and so there's a lot of work already happening outside of this plan around basically making sure that different youth programs are basically collaborating with each other and having an even greater impact. So we want to make sure that if anything, this plan is just leveraging the already existing efforts to basically the already existing efforts to make sure that youth have access to high quality programming. I will say that it's been, at least a year in the process, but there's been an effort to basically do youth-led design of the vacant lot along Central and Ohio, and that's being led by a number of youth-driven organizations from Root to Fruit and Territory, and so that will likely, that will be in the plan. There will be a plan lifting up, making sure that there's opportunities for youth to drive the design of spaces along Central Avenue. So that's going to be part of it, and we're excited for that because often it's just about youth programming, but also it's important to provide the opportunities and empower young folks to kind of shape the built environment in the community.
Could you speak to what projects are currently underway? I know you mentioned 40 acres is right off Central in Chicago Avenue. Are there any other major projects that's in development now on Central, and do you know of any that will be getting started like in the immediate future?
Yeah. Sorry for cutting you off. I'd be remiss not to say like the Aspire Center for Workforce Innovation is currently under construction. If you go to the corner of Madison and Central, you'll see, they say, cranes in the sky. And this is going to be, this is a long time coming. It required a lot of community planning, a lot of fundraising, and, in the near future, we're going to have a community center, a space for collaboration, connectivity, and also for residents to be able to receive high quality workforce training. So that's currently under development, and we're really excited about that. And then, there's 40 acres fresh market, and one of the first development projects along Central Avenue since from when the plan was published was an effort. I mean, this was happening before the plan was published, the quality of life plan was published, but was the rehab or development of the K. Ryan Center for the Arts. So as many of you might know, that's also along Central Avenue and is a state-of-the-art venue for high quality performances, both from, community resident artists as well as those who are maybe touring, and is, kind of a one-of-a-kind performance venue in Austin.
Nice. Great. And now, $1 million question. What is the funding source? And have funds been allocated?
Yeah. Oh, is this you, Mia? I got it. Sorry about that. So the planning process has been supported. ACT has, resourced a lot of the planning, but in large part it's been through the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning with their local technical assistance program. So we couldn't have done it without their support. Now, funding, so that's been for the planning process. In order to realize what ultimately becomes the final list of recommendations that get published, that's going to require a whole lasagna, you could call it something else, but set of funding sources. We're talking, philanthropy, financial institutions, public dollars at different levels of government that are going to be necessary and leveraged in order to make this plan become a reality. We're talking a plan where some of the recommendations will likely be more than $1 million if we want to do this right and equitably. So we're in the process where we're thinking about what are potential funding sources for different potential recommendations. But at this point, the funding that's been secured is really for the planning process.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, we have more questions in the chat. Let's get to it. Okay, you guys mentioned before the boundaries between Chicago Avenue and Jackson. Could you briefly touch uh, on that point again, just to clarify for people that's on the live?
Yeah. So basically when I was talking about Chicago and the Jackson boundary, I mentioned it because that was what TAP, the panelists that we talked about before, that was their study area. And so they were only kind of focusing on those boundaries when they were providing recommendations. Um, but on a larger scale, the CMAP recommendations kind of expand beyond those boundaries, and also all this master plan as well highlights intersections and such that are throughout Austin. So those boundaries are just for the TAP report to get a sense of like Austin and Central Avenue, but isn't as restrictive for the other parts of the planning process.
And another question, what are the engagement plans for residents that are not aware of this at all? Specifically those who reside or frequent Central Ave daily.
Well, ways for like people to become engaged could be just reaching out. That QR code that I gave at the end of the presentation, we could put that back up later, but essentially it will ask you like, do you want to get like invitations to some of the planning process for Central Avenue? And so that could be a way that you can get constant like reminders or um, information about when we're meeting and what's currently happening with the plan. And then also that 2024 summit that we're having in March, that's a really huge way for you to become more engaged, not only with Central Avenue, but what ACT and the Austin Forward Together plan is doing in general. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll also add if you are someone works or engages or is friends or family with people who are passionate about this project but haven't been engaged to date. Let us know, and potentially we can work something. We can follow up with you and figure out, are there opportunities to like set up pop-up events? Are there follow-ups that you can help us facilitate? And maybe we can work something out. There's always opportunities to find creative ways to engage. But yeah, I think Mia listed the main ones, which is we do have these open calls and opportunities to provide input.
And please share this out. Please, let's get the word out as much as possible. I feel like everything counts, from each flyer to each share to each post, each conversation that we're having. Let's keep the conversation going. Yeah, because that's it's hard. I mean, we want to try to reach everyone, of course. Uh, it takes a village, it takes a community, so everybody has to do their part with that for sure. Another question: how many wards does Central Ave run through? And are the aldermen and alderwomen women engaged with this development?
Yeah, so I can answer that. From my understanding, Central Avenue is many parts of it actually. One side of the street is the 29th ward, and one side of the street is the 37th ward, which actually makes it, honestly, particularly probably complicated, complex to plan around, because obviously, input and support from the older people are really important to drive planning efforts forward. So yeah, like Alderman Taliaferro was at the TAP report presentation, um, you know, a little less than a year ago. There's been, preliminary engagement, and there will continue to be, to make sure that we're ultimately moving in lockstep.
Okay. Are when will the work begin? When will this work along Central Avenue begin, and how long will the development take?
Wait, I'm gonna take this. So for now, we are looking at the recommendations and providing feedback. So right now, there's just this is just a space to reckon with what we're receiving as a community. Not everybody knows what's going on yet. So I think it's important to make sure that we're getting this community engagement now so that we aren't doing something that the community don't want. So right now there's not necessarily like a big part of implementation yet, just because we're still trying to get community members to become more engaged with this process. And then for how long this project will take, CMAP has kind of broken it down in like timing of each kind of recommendation that they gave. So they have stuff that can be immediate. So like you can implement it in 1 year, to all the way for a longer term, which could be 5+. So it's a wide range of timing for each recommendation. But again, right now, it is just a focus on making sure that we're getting solid feedback so that we don't implement something that the community doesn't want. Yeah.
Great. And is there a deadline for the completion of overall development along Central Avenue?
I'm gonna just expand a little bit for like deadline purposes. Some of the recommendations are like program focused as well. So there could definitely be like a hard stop for some of the public realm, like fixing like a traffic light or something like that. But for others, it's like providing youth programs and such. So those things that just carries on. So there's not like a hard deadline for this is going Central Avenue will be done at this point in time, because um, it's a continuous project, and that's my like view of it at least.
Okay. All right. There's another great question. Are there any resources to create play spaces uh, for youth? Most of our area parks and play lots do not accommodate their demographic and specifically smaller youth from age 5 and under.
Yeah, that's a super insightful question slash point. The short answer, maybe not the most fulfilling one, is I don't know. But we can take that feedback and see where it might fit in. I know that there's been efforts to create um, nature play sites in different parts of the neighborhood. There's one at Harambe Garden, not too far from Central Avenue, and another one in on the island. And both these sites use basically nature, stones and trunks, and to basically allow and enable and create opportunities for play for young people. And so those have been some projects I've seen be successful, like close to Central in the last few years. But I think we haven't necessarily gotten that specific in any sort of recommendations around the play areas and what demographics they're suited to. So something to keep in mind.
This is another question that may be worth putting in the parking lot, and they want to know: is the Blue Line stop an actual convenience for Austinites, or would it be a convenience for Oak Park residents?
Well, like just from my point of view of like where it is, um, I was it would be it's like on Central. So I think or in the Austin area itself. Oak Park has their own like Blue Line stop. So I don't know. I don't think it would be like something to convenience people who are in Oak Park. It's like dead center of Austin. So I think it would be for Austin people. Yeah.
Great. Oh, this is a great one. Have you doing all the research and canvassing and engaging? Have you found that the community is overwhelmingly interested in having a specific business or entity along the corridor central? Or is it pretty much open and kind of scattered as far as the ideas right now?
That's a really good question. We'll whoever asked that question, we'll try to get back to you. I'd be interested. We obviously have a lot of questions and notes taken from community engagement sessions, but I don't have an answer for you at this time. You know, there has been questions around music and arts and performance, but there's also been talk about, you know, play areas or youth design space or opportunities. I don't know, for play areas and green space. So, which I know is less business focused. I think it is worth noting, and this is kind of what makes this process so both important and complicated, is Central Avenue is not like Madison or Chicago. It's not a lot of commercial businesses. The land use is very residential. And so a lot of like the business and commercial component are really at those nodes or those intersections between, you know, Madison and Chicago and Division. So it makes the planning just a little bit dynamic in a way that we're still trying to wrestle with.
Okay, I have just a couple of more questions. Right, as we think about building sustainable economies in Austin, are there any specific ideas that are currently on the table?
Can you say that again?
This person stated, as we think about building sustainable economies in Austin, are there any specific ideas that are on the table? And I'm guessing they're directing this strictly to the economic aspect of the development.
I could try to like tackle that. I think what was highlighted, especially in the findings, is that a lot of Austin residents like purchase and consume outside of Austin itself. So there's no like kind of sourcing back into or like funding back into Austin. And so with the establishment of the establishment of like businesses within Austin. So like they had like a food oriented idea, and like these workforce and stuff like that. I think that is supposed to aid in providing like a sustainable economy for Austin, like being able to have like a grocery store and coffee shops and stuff like that. You're funding those businesses within Austin versus going out to like Oak Park or like main Chicago to get like food or other essentials. So I think building these businesses will aid in creating sustainable economies for Austin.
And will there be any incentives as far as business owners or entrepreneurs that look to open up businesses along this corridor wide during this period? Any extra incentives to kind of, I guess, enhance the development process?
As I said before, we in the recommendation. So I think once we get a good sense that this is something that we want to move forward for, every like specific action will be, I guess, expanded on. And that will include like the incentives for businesses to come to Austin and such. Like it has to be. I think just the details of that is not something that we fully know right now.
Okay. Well, and this would be the last question. Okay, dun dun dun. When we imagine workforce development strategies, are there any specific industries we would like to train, or we like our residents to train from? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there are two. It's worth noting that the Workforce Center for this, the Workforce Center, sorry, the Aspire Center for Workforce Innovation is going to have really high quality workforce training program that, you know, is focused on, you know, high precision manufacturing. So that's computer numerical control, potentially, robotics. So there's a lot of opportunity for training at this site. And it's based on, different sectors where you can have you can have a family sustaining career. But I think I also see the other side of things of making sure we're in touch with where people's passions lies. And I think that's where like supporting youth programming, that's mentoring folks on pursuing their passion, is also a really important key to this whole process. Did that answer the question? Hopefully it
did. So if not, reach out to Ethan. Reach out to our team. Scan those QR codes. This conversation is not over. And that leads me to the last question. Someone says nothing substantial gets built without trucks. Will there be any opportunities for Austin area trucking companies?
Yeah, I saw that. I don't have the answer to that. Sorry. That's a interesting question. I guess we'll get back to you. I'll be honest, that is an area where I have less knowledge. So thanks for that question.
I guess another question could be, what is there like something that you've heard, like a pressing need, other than, of course, grocery, food resources along that corridor, that people who are in those industries might have an opportunity to intersect themselves when it comes to Central?
Yeah, I think hopefully this answers the question, which is there's a desire for this corridor to be safe, both from a pedestrian experience, but it's a place where people can walk around and be with their family and just have a nice stroll on a Saturday or Sunday. So I think we're thinking a lot about those things. But also I think a lot of our recommendations are thinking and centering, how do we make sure that this is a thriving corridor for families, young people, people, I don't know, just graduating college, new parents, grandparents. We're thinking of how do we make it a very family-oriented corridor. And so when we're thinking about, businesses and interests, a lot of that is, does this support that vision? So I hope that, I know it's broad, but I think that's probably the best answer I can give towards that question.
Great. Okay. Yeah. That was our last question. Thanks again. Great presentation. Be on the lookout for the next Hub 101 coming in February. Stay tuned. Also, I don't know if you want to plug your summit coming up in March.
Woo woo! Hey, save the date. We literally went live maybe yesterday. Save the date. Our summit, our big summit is March 9th. It's a Saturday. Get excited. Tell your friends. This is going to be about Central Avenue planning, but also it's going to be where are we going with the Austin Forward Together Quality of Life Plan? We've come so far. It's been 5 years since it's been published, and we want to discuss with you all, like, what's the future. And so I'm excited. I hope we can count on you to be in attendance. It's going to be one of the many events of the year. So hope to see you then.
Great. Yep. Once again, be on the lookout for updates on the next Hub 101 Summit. Tomorrow, we're having a synergy session from 5 to 7. And also be on the lookout for updates about safe and peaceful grant applications. So thanks again. Until next time, peace.